Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Okay. All right. Well, good to be with all of you. It's official now. Hope you are all doing well. We are beginning a new text. So, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. So this is the third volume in this series. We've completed 2 volumes. And so we're venturing on to new territory. How exciting. I feel like we should put our seatbelt on or something. Let's pop it up and get right to it. There we go. All right. We can just get a sip of water for my voice. All right. The self, the 4 truths, and their 16 attributes. Right. The 4 truths of the Aryas are 4 facts that Aryas, beings who directly see the ultimate nature of all persons and phenomena, know as true. These 4 truths establish the fundamental framework of the Buddha Dharma. So a good understanding of them is essential. In this chapter, we'll look at the 4 truths in general, and in subsequent chapters, we'll examine each one in detail. The 4 truths describe the unawakened and the awakened experiences of this merely designated self. So to begin with, I would like to share some reflections on the self, the person who is reborn in cyclic existence, practices the path, and attains awakening. All right. 3 questions about the self. And this is, by the way, the voice of His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, this writing. I enjoy interfaith gatherings and appreciate the genuine in-depth dialogue and cooperation that result from them. At one such gathering in Amritsar, India, each participant was asked 3 questions. Is there a self? Is there a beginning to the self? Is there an end to the self? Here are my thoughts. So we start with, is there a self? Most non-Buddhists assert an independent self, an Atman or soul that takes rebirth. What leads them to say this? Although we know that our adult bodies did not exist at the time of our births, when we say, at the time I was born, we feel there was a self that was born and that this same self exists today. We may also say, today my mind is calm, indicating that our mind is different today than yesterday when it was disturbed. But we feel the I is the same as yesterday. The mind changed, but not the I. When we see a flower, we think, I see. And it feels that there is a real person who sees it. In all these cases, although we know that the body and mind change, we still have the sense of an enduring I that is the owner of the body and mind. This is the basis for believing there is a permanent, unitary, independent self that goes to heaven or hell or is reborn in another body after death. From this comes the conclusion that there must be an unchanging, independent I that is present throughout our lives and remains the same, although the mental and physical aggregates change. This I is the agent of all actions such as walking and thinking. So, a quick pause there. So when he's talking about, most non-Buddhists believe, this I is reborn, and pointing out, Christians also believe this, but it's heaven or hell, but that is a rebirth in that sense. But I think we can all kind of get, it does feel like, there's an I, there's, John here. And, John was talking to you last week. And, but a lot of things about John has changed. But often, we think, well, okay, my body's changing, but I am not changing. My mind is changing, but I am not changing. And so, it, makes sense to a lot of people that there is this I that's underneath all of these experiences that we're having, whether it's with the body, mind, or emotions. And so that's just the general view of most non-Buddhists. All right. Oops, that was the wrong click there. Share screen. There we go. While both Buddhists and non-Buddhists accept the existence of the self, that's a good sentence to look into. Sorry, I have this little thing popping up I need to get rid of. While both Buddhists and non-Buddhists accept the existence of the self. Key point there, sometimes you'll hear Buddhists talk about no self. And he's saying, well, most Buddhists believe there is a self. And I think sometimes words get really tricky here. People say, Buddhists, there's no self, and you'll hear no self. But generally, really what they're saying is not self. That what I'm identifying as self is not the self. And so it's not that there isn't a self. Don't know, you have to look. But we can clearly identify that what I am pointing to as the self is not the self. And so my body's not me, my thoughts are not me, these emotions are not me. When I really dive down all the things that I'm attending to, that is self, I start to find out, well, that's not it. And so Buddhists won't find this enduring sense of self. And so a lot of people will use the word no self, but it's really much more of a not self. And so the whole core root problem in Buddhism is we identify me and mine with that which is not me and mine. And so this understanding of, let's stop identifying a self with something that is not the self. An experience is an experience. And so he's going to unpack that now. But I think that's a key term because, people say Buddhists don't believe in self. Well, it's not technically true. They don't believe in a self that's independent and self-existent and existing in the way that we attend to it. So back to that sentence. While both Buddhists and non-Buddhists accept the existence of the self, our ideas of what the self is differ radically. Most non-Buddhists accept the existence of a permanent, unchanging soul or independent self, while Buddhists refute it. Although no Buddhist philosophical school asserts a permanent, unitary, independent self. These schools have various ideas of what the self is. The mental consciousness, the continuum of consciousness, the collection of aggregates, or the mere I that is merely designated. So, big point here, different Buddhist schools have different ideas about this. So it's not all, one big consensus. It's much more of a different perspective that'll be taken. And so the Prasangika Madhyamaka school of thought, which is, and then again, this Holiness speaking, which is generally accepted as the most refined system of tenets. Again, doesn't mean that other schools aren't just as valid or anything. This is the one that is predominant, especially in Tibetan viewpoints. Says that the self is merely designated on dependence of the body and mind. Because the self is merely imputed, we can say, I am young or old, and I think and feel. If the person were a completely different entity from the body and mind, it would not change when either the body or mind changes. So that's a little tricky sentencing there. Because the self is merely imputed, we can say these things. But making the point here, if the person were a completely different entity from the body and mind, it would not change when either the body or mind changes. So we're not separate from the body and mind in that sense. But we can experience things through this body and mind. We might be much more than this body and mind, but that which is experiencing, getting older, or having feeling or thoughts arises only in dependence upon this body and mind. So independence upon this body and mind, there is a sense of self that feels it's getting old, or it's feeling, or it is young. But no body, no mind, that's a different experience. And there's something that is changing moment to moment. And so we think about, instead of this permanent soul, the soul that's in this body, and let's say, you are good with rebirth, and this same soul would go into a different body. Buddhism's going to look at it much more as a stream of consciousness. A stream of consciousness. Body's changing, my mind's changing, everything's changing, how I feel about things is changing. And I'm arising moment to moment, independence upon my experiences, my karma, the body, the mind. Within the mind is the karmic imprints that give rise to how I experience things. But there's nothing stagnant there. There's nothing not changing. So the idea is that this sense of self, the self that I'm experiencing, is in a constant change. It's a constant flow. All right, moment to moment to moment. Already I'm not different. I am different than I was yesterday. Will be different in a few moments. And so when we think about self in this sense, it's this stream of consciousness, continuity of consciousness, of experience. It's arising moment to moment to moment to moment. And there's nothing unchanging about it, as opposed to the view that there is this unchanging sort of soul that's always there, that doesn't really change, even though the body changes or the mind changes. Everybody good with that? Any comments or thoughts? Okay, taking a little deeper dive. There is something that is aware of these changes, right? Yeah. There's something that's aware. And we can be aware of the thoughts. Well, then we're not thoughts, but we're aware of those thoughts. I can be aware of my body movements. I'm not just this body. And, somebody were to cut my arm off, throw it over there. Is that going to be me? Or am I here? Where am I? And so, okay, we start, wow, where is this self? But there's something that's aware of all this. So I imagine I'll unpack that a little more deeply, but if we start really exploring and resting more in awareness, you'll start to be able to observe things, so this awareness. And I kind of, I notice myself is, and I find it helpful to notice sometimes is, my awareness is never tired. John gets tired. John gets real tired sometimes. But what I've noticed is my awareness is never tired. My awareness is in my sleep. My awareness is my waking hours. My awareness, whatever brings something, awareness is always there, right? It's always there. And it's operating, even at levels I'm not tuned into at all. So, but that awareness is constantly there and constantly alert. And so there are these practices we get to use, like becoming aware of awareness and then resting in that awareness. And in front of it, stay in awareness of awareness itself without cognitive activity, thinking or anything. There's this awareness. And so one approach will be just going deeper down and following that awareness. And where's that arise from? As an exploratory adventure to start to discover, what is this that is aware. I think some chat things are popping up while I was talking. So self-awareness. So self-awareness is a tricky thing because we also have just a very conventional reality we live in, I may know that I'm much more than my body, but, I need to be aware of this body. And this is the one I'm using. As a matter of fact, after the talk here, I'm going to get on a treadmill so I can keep my body in shape. And, so this body's arising again in dependence upon, as we'd say, our karmic imprints and conditioning and so forth, and all those causes that give rise to it. And so self-awareness can mean, just being self-aware of my motives, the thoughts going on, my body itself, what needs attending to. And then there's a different level of awareness where we're resting in awareness itself. And so the exercise there is, let's say we're on the breath. So we're just focused on the breath. You can then actually move into simply becoming aware of your awareness. Awareness is very still, very still. And then we just become aware of that awareness and then try to rest in that awareness itself. So that becomes the object of the meditation, awareness of awareness. And very still, but aware. And it's luminosity. It's just this awareness. Then the other type of self-awareness or seeking that self would be to then look at who is aware, right? What is aware? And now you're in Vipassana land. Now you're in insight land. So awareness, still technically shamatha practice. It's, stability of mind. It's this unification of mind, just not different than the breath really, but at a more subtle level, same thing, just resting, staying focused on one object. And then you can invert, and then, okay, what's aware? And then you start poking at what is aware. So that's a different kind of self-awareness that we're looking for. And start probing that question. So the first part, like breath, shamatha practice, concentration, that's what gives you the capacity to do vipassana, the insight. So we stabilize the mind, we get very stable, very clear. We can rest our attention without losing the object of our attention, stay purely focused and unify the mind, this single pointed concentration. And with that capacity, then we can use that focus and attention and then probe sort of the insight meditations to gain, well, the insight, wisdom, vipassana. But also very helpful to simply have awareness of this physical body, the things that we're going to. Carla.
So you describe awareness as being the nature of awareness as being still. And I was listening to a previous podcast the other day, and you described the nature of mind as being still. Are mind and awareness synonymous?
There's different levels of mind. And yes, if I'm saying mind is, so obviously I'm saying obviously, yeah, if we look at our mind, there's a lot going on there, right? A lot of busyness. So a lot of activity there. And a lot of the domain of the mind is images and thoughts and all that's happening. So the mind generally is not still. So if I said the mind, typically it's still, but maybe substrate consciousness of the mind. At that level, you would be very still. Oh, the very nature of the mind itself. That's probably what we're talking about. Would be non-conceptual, luminous, just so the very nature of the mind stream that we're at would actually be luminous, non-conceptual. There's a blissful, and very, it'd be very still, because we would have achieved like that sort of shamatha level of being still. I've not reached the level that it's described when like someone, like I haven't achieved shamatha. So, but they would say that if someone who's achieved shamatha, literally, and resting in that level of mind, that's that natural level of mind, would be, a lot of stillness, and it would be like you're not even moving if you're walking down the street, but things are going by you, which is, I find that would be fascinating. So, but so that's been described. So the natural state of mind, when it is still, the natural state of the mind is that blissful, luminous, non-conceptual state, really still. But most times it's not, we're not resting there, and the mind has a lot of mental activity. Okay, so this is still all mind within samsara. Awareness has multiple levels. So there's awareness at that level, but then there's primordial awareness beyond conventional mind, beyond the mind that's arising in dependence upon this body. And so that awareness, so again, different levels of awareness in that sense. Primordial awareness, which is rigpa, which is, if we achieve rigpa, then we're awake, right? We're awake. So mind and awareness don't always match up as the same thing. And that just depends on the levels that we talk about with mind. But one method of recognizing rigpa is using the mind as the path. And then you'd get into essentially becoming more and more aware, using the mind, and then at some point you even need to drop that. And but if you follow awareness all the way down to its root and break through our conventional mind beyond that substrate consciousness, it's blissful, luminous, non-conceptual, even beyond that, then that would be the primordial awareness. That would be beyond all concept, beyond that would be awake. We'd be awake. We'd be Buddhists. So hopefully that was helpful and not more confusing.
Yeah. I think it's going to be confusing for a while, but we'll keep working on it. Because my other question was, well, if the nature of mind is stillness, then what's doing all the chattering? But I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah, so the conventional domain of the mind that we experience in samsara, remember we're in samsara, so everything in samsara is, it's, it's contaminated, essentially, is the way of looking at it. And so a lot of activity in a conventional mind. And, but even in conventional reality, even our conventional experience, sometimes people can still the mind. And that all that mental chatter can still. And then again, achieving shamatha, you can literally rest in that substrate consciousness, the bhavanga, the ground of becoming. And again, you're just in blissful luminosity and non-conceptual state. And a lot of people think they're enlightened if they do that. And unfortunately, it's a trap. So it's come out of shamatha, you still have mental afflictions, still have, these things. And so the idea is to achieve that capacity of shamatha and then use it for vipassana. And that was the Buddha's big innovation, those two things together. So, shouldn't take more than a couple of weeks. I think we can test it out and see what this primordial awareness business is all about. So this is, again, the introduction to a Buddhist perspective on self. And again, different schools have different ways of viewing it, and even different views about rebirth. But what's consistent is what's being presented here, this more stream of consciousness that arises independence upon the body and mind, this sense of self. And it's not stagnant. There's nothing stagnant. There's nothing independent. It's all interdependent, and it's all arising independence upon. So from the Madhyamaka school that being presented, then this sense of I is a label. It's just a label that's imputed upon this experience, much like a chair is imputed upon. It's a label. It's a concept in my mind. And so the object I'm sitting on, there's no independent thing that is the chair, right? The chair is an idea. And a cat does not see this as a chair. And as a matter of fact, I can do a lot of things with this where this would not be used as a chair and be used for different things. So so that's that understanding. So I think there's a certain empowerment around this that's really meaningful, in that we're never stuck, right? We're always becoming. We're always becoming. And so what I'm doing now is creating my future experience. And what's happening now is from my previous experience. So, and there's a constant flow of becoming. And, so wow, what an opportunity for change, because everything's changing, but now I can be aware of it instead of identified with certain personality traits or afflictions that I think I am this, right? I am ADHD, or I am, whatever my limitation, or I am, not a morning person, or whatever those labels are, where we get stuck and realize, well, actually, that's how you were that day and at that time. And as we work on things, different potentials become available. And, so we'll find that we identify a lot of our personality sometimes with our limitations, and even some of the things that we value can box us in, instead of, these are patterns and habits that arise because of the causes and conditions. And if I start shifting those, my experience starts changing. The sense of I changes as well. It's nice that they start off with a real simple thing to start the book with. What is the self? Let's take a look. The next question, I think, is, where does it begin? Yeah, is there a beginning? Oops, sorry. I got that, sorry. I have these little pop-ups that keep blocking my capacity to see the text. Oh, and then the whole thing goes away. Come on. We're going to get it. I'm feeling good about it. There we go. Is there a beginning to the self? And there's my little pop-up. Huh. Okay. For those who believe in an external creator, they assert an autonomous intelligence that does not depend on causes and conditions. This being, they say, created the world and the sentient beings in it. For many people, the notion that God created life fosters the feeling of being close to God and willingness to follow God's advice, to be kind and refrain from harming others. Their belief in a creator spurs them to live ethically and to help others. Some faiths, such as Jainism and Samkhya, which I'm unfamiliar with, do not assert a creator. But I do not know if they believe the Atman has a beginning. So he's just pointing out different beliefs there. A repeated theme in Buddhism is dependent arising. One aspect of which is that functioning things arise due to causes and conditions. Functioning things is often sort of used as sort of a conditioned existence, conventional existence sometimes. So functioning things that function in this world that we're experiencing. Trees, nature, our bodies, cars, sometimes they function on occasion. So they arise due to causes and conditions, right? Nothing is independent, nothing arises or, is there without arising, and it can only arise from causes and conditions. When explaining the 12 links of dependent origination, the Buddha said, because of this, that exists. Because this has arisen, that arises. Because of this, that exists, points out that things come into existence due to causes and conditions. They do not appear without a cause. If something has no causes, what makes it arise? If things do not depend on causes and conditions, why does a seed grow into a plant in the spring but not in the winter? If our lunch came into being without a cause, it would arise without groceries, pots, or cooks. Therefore, everything, the body, the mind, and the external universe depends on causes and conditions. So, I mean, that makes sense, right? Do you know anything that was just there? Wouldn't that be nice if lunch was just there? No cooks, no pots. That'd be interesting. Especially if it's the kind of lunch you like. But so this is going to get into the tricky business. Well, if things need a cause to exist, what was the previous cause? What was the previous cause? What's the previous cause? So we're going to get stuck in this sort of beginning. And then how can there be something there that wasn't there before? And how can it be if it didn't come into being? And so Buddhists are going, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're here because of, heck, people we've never even met, parents, grandparents, their parents, those parents, and all those things, which eventually gave rise to us. Let's see what he goes a little further on to say before I pause too much here, looking at the time. Okay. So I have all these little pop-ups. They're having adventures. There we go. All right. Because another pop-up, sorry. All right. It's literally because this has arisen, my pop-up. Because this has arisen, that arises illustrates that causes, like their results, are impermanent. Right? Nothing lasts, everything then gives rise to something else, and so forth. If causes did not change, they would continue to exist even after producing their results. However, for a result to arise, its cause must cease. For an apple tree to grow, the seed must cease. It is not possible for a permanent creator or prior intelligence to create the universe and beings in it without itself changing. Each person, thing, and event arises due to its own causes, which in turn have come about independence upon their causes. There is no discernible beginning. Therefore, things are produced by their own unique causes, not by discordant causes. Things do not have the capability to produce them. That's what they're talking about, discordant causes. In other words, an apple tree needs an apple seed, right? You can't have an apple tree from, an orange seed. So things only exist and are produced by their own unique causes, not by these discordant. It's not random. Certain things cannot produce other things. That's not how that works. It is not the case that anything can produce anything. A daisy grows from daisy seeds, not from metal. Our bodies and minds each have their own unique causes. Causes depend on conditions to produce their results. If conditions are unnecessary, a sprout could grow in the dead of winter or in parched soil. It would not depend on warmth and moisture to grow. Multiple causes and conditions are necessary to bring a result. Okay, we're going to keep going here. Each cause not only produces its own results, but also arose due to the causes that produced it. The sprout is the cause of the tree that grows from it, as well as the result of the seed from which it grew. Right? Seed, sprout, tree. Tree becomes seed. If an external creator were the cause of the universe, he or she would also have to be the result of a previous cause. He or she would be caused phenomenon and could not exist independent of causes. If Buddhists do not accept a self who takes rebirth, if Buddhists do not accept a self who takes rebirth, it's a question. although the Buddha refutes a self that exists independent of other factors, he accepts a conventional self that is dependent on its causes, conditions, and parts. This self is designated independence upon the body and mind. So the question of whether the self has a beginning depends on if the body and mind have beginnings. The body is material in nature. Scientists currently say that all matter can be traced back to Big Bang. How did the Big Bang occur? There must have been some material substances, energy, or potential for matter that existed before the Big Bang, and conditions must have been such that it exploded. Here, too, we see that things must have causes that are affected by other conditions and therefore change and give rise to something new. Anybody following along so far? It's the easy stuff, right? Okay. Causes and conditions are sometimes causes and sometimes secondary causes. But, you know, cause, we've had this talk many times, is the same stuff, right? So, you know, a seed, apple seed, you know, becomes, the sprout becomes a tree, right? That's the same stuff. It changes, but it's the same stuff. Conditions would be the soil, the sun, the nurturing of the soil, the water. Okay, those are conditions. And then the seed ripens. And so all of life has causes and conditions, you know, the bees that pollinate and so forth, you know, we get life because of that. And there are causes and conditions and things that give rise. The sort of way to think about causes as a little different than conditions is simply, you know, of the same stuff. So, you know, my mind had to be arose from previous moments of mind. And so, but my body, okay, body clearly came from my parents and then their parents and all that, right? The material aspects. But I think he's going to get into a little bit of the distinction here between material and non-material. We'll see. I didn't read this far ahead because I was a little late getting here, so I skimmed. But, you know, he's making it so straightforward. Our minds change moment to moment. The mind is impermanent and arises due to causes that have the ability to produce each moment of mind. And bear in mind, poor choice of words, when we're talking about mind, we're not talking about the brain, right? So the brain's you know, this organ that's in our head with chemicals and electricity. We're talking about mind, consciousness in a sense. And that arises moment to moment. And the first moment of mind in this life has a cause, because without a cause, it could not exist. The cause of our minds was not our parents' minds, because both of your parents have their own individual continuity of consciousness, as we do, or as do we. The substantial cause of our minds, the cause that turns into the mind, cannot be our bodies or the sperm and egg of, oops, sorry, I gotta get this thing out, of our parents, because the mind and body have different natures. The mind is formless and has the nature of clarity and cognizance, while the body has physical and material characteristics. The only thing we can point to as the cause of the first moment of the mind in this life is the previous moment of mind in the previous life. This continuity can be traced back infinitely, with one moment of mind producing the next moment of mind. There is no beginning. All right. So you'll hear in Buddhism say beginningless time, which basically, you know, don't know how it all started. right? But if you're looking at it from this reasoning, then you're going to see, well, okay, mind can only come from mind, and then previous mode of mind, and that's where, you know, where the mind come. Now, a lot of Western view is that the mind is emergent property of this brain body mechanism, so that, you know, you're born in this body and somehow the mind comes along, right? It's an emergent property, and then when this body dies, you know, that emergent property that somehow arose just from this body dies also. So that's a view, okay? And Buddhist reasoning doesn't hold up with that. It's saying, okay, well, there's the conditions of body and so forth, and the mind arises in dependence upon, in this lifetime, the mind and body. And so that's, again, the things that we get to explore, right? We say, okay, you know, this is the reasoning here. But then the idea is, well, how do you explore this? And that's where the contemplatives, you know, meditate, become much more aware of their awareness. They start watching the mind and then start exploring what is aware. And then you'll have you know, these opportunities to explore being much more than body and mind, and this awareness. And so that becomes the investigation. And so from a Buddhist view, then there is a self, but there's no independent self. There's a self that arises, changing moment to moment, independence upon this body and mind, that then identifies as self, as John here in my case. And but if I start to look for where's John, it's not changing, then I'm not going to find him. All of you are seeing a different John. We've said that many times. And when my other name used to be John Chup Chopel, right, as a monk. So I don't know, maybe that's John Chup Chopel. And I've been called many other names too that I probably can't repeat here. And so, you know, those names and those labels, you know, showed up in that way. And then, you know, you've heard me talk many times that, you know, right now I'm designated, maybe teaching Dharma, right? And but a little while ago, I was working with, you know, clients in a recovery center, and, you know, saw me as a mindfulness teacher. And, you know, a little while ago, I was in a car, so I was a commuter. Before that, I was at a restaurant. Now I'm a customer, you know, consumer. And I'm arising into with all as a consumer, as a commuter, as a, you know, mindfulness teacher, or, you know, someone doesn't know me from Adam, a nearly bald-headed white guy, you know, you know, so all of these labels are all the ways that I'm appearing moment to moment, independent upon the situation I'm in. And but there's nothing that's there that is, you know, none of those things are who I am.
John,
What?
so does this mind consciousness need a body, or is there just a lot of minds floating around out there too?
The mind, so the conventional mind that we're experiencing is dependent upon this body. And so from this perspective, you have your own individual stream of consciousness. So you're not grabbing somebody else's mind. You know, so when this body dies, the store consciousness, where all of our karmic imprints and all that conditioning is, starts seeing itself differently. And, you know, that's where we have bardos and transitional states and no form. And at some point is drawn and creates a new form. And then it starts seeing itself in this new form and relating to that. So it's not that, you know, while we're in samsara, while we're in conditioned existence, very much this stream of consciousness that will become what you call you. It's unique. But that's not who you are. You cut through that, and now all this blows up. It's, that primordial wisdom is not subject to any individual stream. It's not subject to karma. It's, that's where we enter Buddha, awakening. And it's more than any mind body. It doesn't depend on anything. And primordial wisdom, this primordial consciousness. And so technically what we'd say is you need to cut through that even stream of consciousness to actually wake up. And then that you can't really say it's beyond concept. So we can't even start talking about it. They use all these analogies: no beginning, no ending, no coming, no going. It's just beyond all that. And that would be the awakening. So that would be your ultimate self, right? Your Buddha nature, which is beyond human, beyond any of these things, beyond concept, beyond that stream of individual consciousness. You'd be free of all that. That might take a month, no more than a 2-week course.
John, this is Megan in San Diego. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Megan.
Related to that, I appreciated what you said about that Megan, gets tired, but my awareness never gets tired. It's constantly there and constantly aware. And I appreciate that. That's because my awareness has this luminous quality. And it's only when I start to concretize my experience does it become tiring or stressful. And that's because I'm creating my experience as an entity, as my mind, as my ego, as myself. And anyways, just coming home from work today to get here, I was thinking back on all the meetings and experiences I was having today and all the times that I was kind of concretizing into my experience and myself, because I wanted to look, competent and likable and all those things that we seek to be sometimes. So anyways, I appreciated you describing that. That's a really helpful way to look at things, that my awareness is never tired. It's always there as a source of being, different from what my ego and my mind as an entity tries to settle into.
Oh, good to hear. Yeah, it's a lot of work being human. It'll wear you out. Yeah. Yeah, I love Tenzin Priyadarshini's quote. When we say, I'm only human, is nothing but a self-imposed limitation. So, but how do we use this human form in a way that's truly meaningful to use it wisely and take care of it in ways that are healthy and meaningful to be able to provide us access to our Buddha nature, our ultimate nature, which is beyond all these limitations. That's the practice. Hey, check. I think maybe a couple of chats pop up. Okay, something about whitewater rafting. I don't know if I can get all that. If someone becomes enlightened, do they still change? Do Buddhists still have causes and conditions? No. Well, the first part about changing, I have no idea about, but they are not subject to causes and conditions. They're not, there's no, they're free of karma and all of that. There's, again, the challenge to talking about, what Buddhas are is that it's beyond concept. So then we start trying to use concepts, and so that's never right. But what is clear is that they are not subject to this conditioned cyclic existence of rebirth. So what limits us from recognizing who we are and our condition is the karma. We're kind of under the influence of karma and klesha, mental afflictions. A Buddha is not under those influences at all. So free of all this conditioning, free of all that. So they're not going to be trapped in any way. But then, we start talking about what is, a Buddha, and what is fully awakened mind like, and then, they always, well, it's beyond concept. So then we start trying to describe it, which is, that's why no coming, no going, no birth, no death. These types of things that they try to kind of point to. But even the Buddha, the big symbol is him pointing at the moon. He can't, do it for you. He can't describe it. He can point. And so that's the path of Buddhism. Is it's something that cannot be described, but it is something that can be known. Cannot be described. It can be known. We can experience it. And then the path is the method to experience it. All right, well, that was good. We got through 2 of the 3 questions, and I'm sure we got it nailed. So for me, the simple version for me is just this understanding of dependently arising moment to moment, and recognizing that the labels I put on myself don't capture who I am. However, I am still in samsara. I still am identifying with this body. I still am in this conventional experience. And so how do I use this knowing that I'm more than this? So how do I use the life that I'm experiencing in a way that's really productive to have access to the deeper nature? And so you don't want to discount the fact that you're in a human form. As a matter of fact, it's a rare and precious human birth. It is the vehicle for awakening. And so let's use this experience, this body, these experiences of emotions and grasping to figure out how to really live in this way that is fundamentally training our attention better, living more ethically, kindness, loving kindness, compassion. And then those become the fertilizer for wisdom to arise. And then start probing and kind of noticing my feelings didn't last. Those thoughts didn't last. Those situations I worried about didn't have the impact I thought they would. I can have more observation about my mind and thoughts and have more choice about my actions than I used to. And that I'm always becoming. And there's, what do I want to water? Because that's what's going to grow. And I can be conscious about the choices I make and who I become and how I experience things. And so the path is becoming aware of what to adopt, right? Virtue, loving kindness, compassion, what to avoid, that attachment, aversion, that ignorance, that self-grasping. That becomes the prison. Loving kindness, compassion, wisdom become, the path. So the more I can be motivated by one and avoid the other, the greater capacity I have to start experiencing myself and others more accurately, understanding interdependence and these very temporary experiences that I'm having, rather than some grasping of a reified self in a way I do not exist. And others don't exist. Okay, well, we're I think running towards time here. Any what do they call them? Burning desires, questions that want to check out before we dedicate? Everybody's good. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have cultivated from our time together. And I am relatively certain I have that. Yep. So what a gift it is to have come together, this time that we have cultivated together, the wisdom of compassion, of kindness, of striving to make good use of the life that we have and to be of benefit to others. A great deal of merit has arisen, and we have the opportunity now to dedicate this merit and wisdom for the benefit of all sentient beings, that may they be free of suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may continue to create the causes and conditions to make good use of this life, so we can create the conditions to recognize our own Buddha nature and be of ultimate benefit to all. And let's dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.